Hello and welcome to the Region 7 Zoomcasts, where we conduct interviews with our Region 7 colleagues to learn the perils and pearls related to our COVID-19 response in the hopes of sharing lessons learned and learning something new that we can all benefit from. My name is Angie Vasha, and I am the Director of Isolation and Quarantine Services for Special Pathogens here at Nebraska Medicine. Today, we're going to talk with Morgan Shradar and her daughters, Tori and Izzy, in regards to the hot topic of home for the holidays. And this is a really special Zoomcast in which we're going to talk a little bit about the unique challenges of having family that have college-age students and a little bit about the emotional impact of being a college student during COVID and during the holiday season. So welcome.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you've been doing in the current pandemic, and then we'll kind of just jump into some questions around how you felt the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted you, and specifically talking about response to the holidays.
Okay, I'll start. This was my first year in college, and so my first semester was just a lot of trying to figure out how everything was going to work. And then that added COVID kind of stress was just a lot more regulations. And it was like, for sure, a lot more difficult to figure out how to work ways to develop friendships, develop good relationships with your professors, especially when you're just on Zoom with them. But my university especially has done a great job to open like pathways for us to figure everything out. So while it was definitely more difficult, there were for sure like efforts within my university that made it a lot easier for me, which I was very thankful for.
Great. And just to clarify, both of you are from Nebraska, but you go to school out of state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Well, on that note, I'm the oldest child, so I'm a sophomore at Washington University in St. Louis. But I decided to stay home this semester due to concerns and just how my university was regulating campus. I felt more safe being at home. That being said, all of my classes were online, and I only had one class that was not synchronous. So everyone else, whether we were in class or not, we had projects. We had just all sorts of due dates, and having to submit everything online versus just turning in an essay in person. And then in addition to that, being that I'm a sophomore, I was already part of clubs and organizations on campus.
Yeah.
Really hard for all of these organizations to create a plan just to get through the semester and also invite those new freshmen into the organizations themselves.
That's a really good point. I want to get back to a couple of things that both of you mentioned, but Morgan, would you mind introducing yourself and kind of what your role is here at Nebraska Medicine, and then just also kind of speak a little bit about, how it felt to have two college-age children in varying stages of starting college, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about some of those things.
Sure. My name is Morgan Shradar. I am a member of the Nebraska Biocontainment team as their clinical coordinator. I work alongside you, Angie, and Kate, Cheryl, and Shanaz, and lots of other folks on just keeping a state of readiness for our unit as we deploy and are active amongst the COVID response. So these are two kids. They are at different stages of their college career. One just might have landed a couple of minutes ago when returning home. But I think, in navigating this, there's a lot of just new challenges that I think we address every day as we're looking at ways to look at what their new normal is, in approaching their college life and giving them that college experience.
Mm-hmm. So I think, both of you talked a little bit about the challenges of getting connected and staying connected, starting a new chapter of life and making new friends, new professors, kind of new experiences. So I don't know if you could talk a little bit about what were the things that you found that the college campuses did to really help you feel like you were being immersed into the college experience when it was a really non-traditional way to start. And then how did that kind of translate into getting prepared for the holiday break? And just kind of if you guys would talk a little bit about the experience that you've had, kind of, perils and pearls that you've experienced as you went through those changes.
Yeah, so my university did a really good job at trying to facilitate events that would be like COVID friendly. And so there were a lot of like Zoom get-togethers where we'd like all get on Zoom and like do a Bob Ross painting party so that we'd like pick up supplies from like our a dorm director, and they would like hand them out the morning of, and then at night we would all just get on Zoom together and paint, or like we would do the same things. Like I go to Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
very musically inclined university, and so people would get on and like play their most recent songs that they've written and everything, and it was very nice for sure to like still have those outlets and like interact with people in some facet, but it was extremely difficult for me to still try and make connections with people over a Zoom call. So that was
Absolutely.
for sure difficult for me. And especially, I am the only person, only freshman from Nebraska at my university that I have at least interacted with. And I've had some teachers confirm that. And I just like have nobody that I could really like rely on to just be like an immediate friend other than my, the person that lived in my dorm with me. But she was an amazing person. And we really just tried to find safe ways to like get out and interact with people, which was originally done by like everybody would go on the lawn, which is outside of our, like it's just an outdoor area that's like centered in our dorms. But then the presidential debate was on our campus and it ruined our lawn. It was turned into a muddy place. But we all tried really hard. And like coming home, like I would still interact with friends and everything, but like the last 2 weeks I really sat with the same 3 core friends of mine that I've made through my classes and everything. And so I just tried to limit my outings and for sure just stick with the same people. And if my friends got tested for COVID, as one of my friends just did today because she got home and her family's immunocompromised, she tested negative. And so we all feel like a bit of security knowing that we were in fact safe and protecting ourselves as well as our family in the past 2 weeks of preparing to come home.
That's great. So I think a follow-up question, and then I want to hear a little bit more about your experiences kind of, making the decision to be a distance learner and what that felt like in your sophomore year. But a question that I have as you were preparing to come home, I know there's a lot of discussion across the collegiate level on whether students should come home or not. And when we think about kind of the COVID cases going up, especially here in the Midwest, disproportionately to other areas of the country, did you have concerns about coming home? I know that you said you guys kind of self-quarantined, really limited your circle, put those precautions in place to decrease risk for your family with you coming back. But just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that felt like being out of state and knowing you were coming back to some of the higher case count areas.
Yeah, for sure. Nashville we were increasing a bit in COVID as well. And so I was starting to take a lot more precaution once those results came out, which was related to like after the debate is when we got those results.
Gotcha.
And I was trying to be extremely cautious, and knowing that I'm coming home to grandparents and I have an aunt who is immunocompromised, and just was for sure a lot of stress surrounding it. But like now that I'm home, I will not be interacting with any of my grandparents or any of my extended family outside of like the people that I live with for 2 weeks, just to make sure that everything is safe. And while some people do argue that we should not have came home and that we should have just like tried to like be like protect our families in that way, I think one thing that we need to foster due to COVID is our sense of community. And if we lose that sense of community while we are like undergoing this global change, for sure, it's very detrimental, especially to mental health and emotional health, which is a lot of our concerns at like the college level, because you are like stressing yourself about grades and about relationships and about internships and everything like that. And so adding that extra stressor of not being able to come home and interact with like the people that you're closest with as your family, I definitely would have taken a toll on that for sure.
It's a really great point. And would you be able to talk a little bit more about what that's felt like making the decision not to return to campus after you had already gone through the challenges of, forging new friendships, joining new clubs, kind of, moving into that next chapter of life, and then, kind of making the decision to not go back, but try to maintain that connection?
For sure. For most of the spring, and even when we were sent back from campus during spring break of March this year. Okay. We had full intention of coming, being at full throttle, 100% in the fall, and by late July, it just did not seem possible. there were so many different things coming into play, and depending on what individual or like school you were in, they had totally different responses. I was part of I'm studying under the business school, so the business
Okay.
school had a completely different response than the McKelvey Engineering School or the Arts and Sciences School, and I just, because of all of those different variables, as much as I wanted to go back and be able to see my
Mhm.
friends and be in person, there were so many barriers to entry. And being that I have already had that first year experience, I've made
Mhm.
friends, still continuing to make friends, and been on campus and been a pseudo adult for a second. I understood that there would be a lot of challenges for me to go back because my university was limiting when and we could not leave our dorms. So we'd have to register to leave our dorms for over 2 hours. And for somebody who
Wow.
I like to exercise, I like to be active, I like to be outdoors, that was something that I could not give up just because I valued being outside and knowing that that was an outlet for me to relax and enjoy what life as it is. I'd say that my decision to stay at home was truly fueled by my concerns about mental health. Just because they aren't letting anybody interact with each other on campus, and you can be in the same classroom, but you have to be at least 6 feet away, and you can't communicate in class. There's no discussion going on in class, really.
Sure.
Fears of like transmission, even through cloth masks. And it's been an interesting journey for sure. And not to say I've just locked myself up in my family's house, but I still don't see the people I used to see every day.
Right.
That's definitely, it took a toll for a second, especially those first weeks of class, where normally from what I was experiencing last year, those are the most fun days of class. You're meeting everybody. You're like, oh my goodness, you're in the same class as I am. We should study together. Just those like camaraderie things that you do miss. And overall, it's been an interesting process. And even connecting with friends has been quite interesting, since I am one of the only Nebraska students at my school. We're all in all sorts of different time zones, really. My roommate and somebody I was going to live with this year actually lives in China, and she's one of my friends. So we haven't been able to like communicate a lot of the time, because when she's sleeping, I'm awake.
Sure.
When she's awake, I'm trying to sleep, so I would say that in terms of everything going on, the clubs themselves have been doing pretty well. The first couple of weeks were rough. We didn't know how to interact, how to reach out to students, and to new freshmen. But overall, as the semester progressed, we've had meetings, we've had like virtual social hour, which is like where we play a virtual game of Cards Against Humanity, just like normal college stuff, just
Sure.
online. And I think that's been really helpful. And I'd say that a lot of even freshmen that I've met through that process have thought that it's been very beneficial for them, just because they don't know what to expect next year or the year after that, when everybody is on campus.
So those are great points and really good suggestions, I think, for other college students or families who have college students who are struggling to stay connected. When we think about, I know you had said that you're going to kind of implement more stringent measures to maintain separation from extended family or friends for the next 2 weeks. So talk to us a little bit about how you guys are going to maintain or, kind of reconnect with family that you haven't seen because you've been gone or because you've already been implementing some of those separations. And so talk to us a little bit about the things that your family's going to do to celebrate the holidays in a safe way, but still maintain that sense of familial connection.
Yeah, so I was informed like 2 days ago that we were doing a Zoom Thanksgiving with our grandparents. I was like, do they even know how to use Zoom? I was like, are we sure that's gonna work? But as for Thanksgiving, that is definitely how we are going to do that based off of what my mother has told me. And I guess she's a reliable source, I figure. And so that's going to be great because that's just going to be immediate family, and we'll be like interacting with all of our extended family, like grandparents, on Zoom. So while it is not ideal, and I will miss baking with my grandmother in preparation, it will be the same. And I do understand like the repercussions. And as for friends, like I'm trying to estrange myself from everybody for 2 weeks, except my immediate family. Especially one of my best friends is immunocompromised here in Omaha. And so I don't know if I could be a carrier or just like have it and could transmit it to somebody, but I just do not feel comfortable taking that risk in any facet. And I especially want everybody to be safe around the holidays because they are going to be going and seeing their family. And I don't know if one of my friends is going to go home and have somebody that's immunocompromised within
Right. So you said that I think you mentioned you're going to miss baking with your grandmother as a tradition. So talk to us a little bit about what have your favorite holiday traditions been? And as you guys are thinking about ways that you can keep those intact, but not increase risk, have you come up with any creative solutions that you'd share with others to consider?
Yes, for sure. Well, one thing that we've considered even doing is pushing back everything. So since Izzy is just getting back, we've strongly considered like potentially just like meeting out quickly, getting some hot chocolate 2 weeks after, just like seeing outdoors, potentially taking is like just like Christmas family pictures where we're all like 6 feet apart from our nuclear families, just like those little things. And I would say that one of my favorite things was Black Friday shopping. And as you know, it's going to be pretty hard to do this year. And so we've gotten pretty great at those online sales, man. I mean, they're coming in every day, it seems. Target cannot just keep going. I'm going to lose all my money. But I think those are like my favorite things to do because it's like all of us, like my mother or my grandmother, my sisters and I, we're like, okay, we get to go to Target, we get to go to Ulta, like, and those are the things I'm going to miss. But there is just all of us getting on our computers and like, oh, there's a deal there. And even just you normally play like Secret Santa among like things. And so we are going to actually pull names tonight, but we've already started like creating lists and ideas for everyone. And I think that you do have a sense of normalcy in all of this, just because you can keep those fundamental fun things going, even though you're not going to be able to go shopping in person.
Yeah. I think the worst thing is if you completely delete those activities outside of because of COVID. And that would just be extremely detrimental, especially for, I don't know, but like for not smaller, but younger families of like kids that are like 5 to like 10, like I really feel like they would lose a good sense of like the holidays and like that familial connection. Cause like for us, like we understand more of like why we need to do this, but for smaller, younger families, I would feel very sad to know that like no kid could go out and bake with his grandparents this Christmas, or like they can't like interact with their cousins on Thanksgiving, because we'll do that. Like normally we would all get together and we'd see like our cousins on Thanksgiving. So I would just encourage families to try and figure a way to make a sense of normalcy so they don't completely feel like estranged from the rest of their family during this.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. So my son is 4 and he has 10 cousins, and my family grew up very similarly. When my sisters and I were young, all of our cousins, we would all get together, and I have 20 plus cousins. We're a really large Czech Catholic family. And so we would get together and have these great big get-togethers. And so this year we're not going to do that. So we're each going to celebrate in our own homes. And so one of the things that we decided we would do, Miles and I are going to put together like a little gift bag, and we're just going to go and drop them off on people's doors. We're going to wave to them. But we're all having our own lunches in our own houses. But I think, you're right that it is important to build those traditions. And while this year might look different, how can we still have something to kind of bring that joy? So I do have one more question for you guys is when you think about, well, one, are you both going to go back after winter break? Or have you guys decided yet what that will look like?
I have tentatively decided that I will be going back for after winter break. just because, in complete honesty, it's the spring is where most of us get our internships. And being on campus is one of the easiest ways to get an internship because you do have all your resources at your hands. You actually meet with somebody and be in that same like general area. So I think that is really helpful. And I'll be completely honest, Omaha is not the greatest city when you're trying to network for a supply internship.
Got it.
It's not always available. So that's I'm may or may not be going back just based off of the numbers and in the changes that my university is implementing even right now.
Sure.
And as for me, I am going back as long as they allow us to go back. My university has done a really good job taking care of our students and everything. And our cases were surprisingly low throughout the year. And so I was very impressed with that. And so I'm concerned that if I don't go back, I'm just going to be losing a lot of those, because I'm a music business major, and music business is completely like how you can interact with others and build those relationships to develop yourself. And like, if I can't go back and not interact with teachers and possible internships as well, then that would be really detrimental to me. And I could not imagine doing completely online school, because we would do one day on Zoom, like where half the class would be on Zoom, half the class would be in person. And the days that I had all of my classes online, I would look over and I'm like, 6:30, haven't left my dorm yet, like, out there. And I'd be like, well, that's really bad. And so it
makes for really long days, I would imagine.
Yeah, I literally sat in the same chair at my desk for multiple hours. Izzy, that's not good for you. Like, you need to go on a run or something. Like,
So when thinking about that, and I don't know how much you've had an opportunity to talk with the university or even just to think about this yourself. So when you and your dorm roommate both come back, how will you guys navigate that kind of 14 days of quarantine, knowing that you've both been out in different communities and both coming back?
Yeah, so my roommate, she lives in Denver, and she is extremely cautious around, like, just due to COVID. And she does have some family members that she is concerned about. And so I know that I can trust her as an extremely responsible person to not overly expose herself in any situations that could be considered like
high risk
or anybody on campus. I will be doing the same, that when I go back to campus, I will probably only interact with like those same 3 core people that I was interacting with before coming here, because I just know that we all have an understanding that this is something that we do need to take seriously and that we do need to be cautious about. And that if we keep in our close knit group, we are having a lot fewer chances of exposing ourselves to, or others to COVID. But we're also still being able to interact with others and form those relationships that are very integral, especially your freshman year of college and just being in a completely different state where you don't know anybody.
For sure.
Like that's what I'm confident is going to happen, because that is how we facilitated ourselves before coming back home. And so I'm confident that we will all be safe and that we will be cautious when we return, or those 2 weeks prior to returning to campus.
Even still, I think as long as you're communicating with whoever you're living with, even for Izzy, just being transparent with the people you're with, that's the most important thing. You do have to mitigate that behavior and like who you're interacting with. Like even myself, I've even though I know people in Omaha and still have friends that live here, if I know that, or if I knew that they were taking part of potentially like risky, like unnecessary risks, I was not going to I decided to not hang out with them or spend time with them, because I know that I'm young and I'm vibrant, but my family members aren't, and those are the most important people to me. So making sure that I mitigate my behaviors to ensure that my family is safe is something that I think Izzy and I have both done pretty well, even though all we want to do is go out and spend time with friends and adults.
Yeah. And like Tori said, I think communication is one of the biggest things. Like, if I was going to go, and as we are a very musical university, people would write songs and then go play them at like bars or restaurants. And so while those bars and restaurants do have regulations, like if I was going to go out, like I told my roommate, I was like, hey, I'm going to go watch my friend play, but my 3 people of friends, right? We would all sit in the same corner, all have our masks on, and we would like never eat in that area that we were at. Like we were like very cautious because while we did want to support the people that are very close to us, we still wanted to prevent any unnecessary exposure to ourselves or others. And so just communicating with her and like my roommate and her communicating with me saying like, hey, I'm going to go watch a movie in like the dorm basement with 5 of my friends. Like that's like just something that everybody needs to be considerate of for sure. Just because you are going to not know everything that your roommate's doing when I could be like, mother, what'd you do today?
Sure.
Tori,
Well,
where'd you leave to or something?
Well, I think you both made a really good point. And I think, as we all try to figure out, like, how do we maintain friendships or relationships through the COVID pandemic, I like the suggestions that you guys had of kind of creating a core nucleus of people and really being clear about what are you expecting from communication, from behaviors, what are the risks that you're comfortable with, or what are the things you're not comfortable with, and then having those really open, transparent communications. And I think that that's really come through with the way that your family has decided to approach the holidays. I think that it's come through in the way that you guys have chosen to navigate your college relationships. So I know we don't have a lot of time left. So I would ask you as if there was one thing that you would want to say to our audience, kind of as it relates to the way that you think that you've prepared for the holidays, or as you're preparing to, go back to school, kind of one thing that you would want to leave our audience with.
Ooh, that's a tough question. I'd
It
have to
is.
think for a second.
For me, it would definitely, like, I don't know. I'm just a very talkative person, and I believe that talking through things will always be the easiest way to come to a solution or just like reach an understanding of the person that you're going to be interacting with. So I would just strongly like over communicate if you can. Like when you're going, well, if you're coming back, like communicate to your family. What did you do? Like, were there precautions and everything? And then also like communicate to like your friends that you're coming back to, like say like, I'm not going to interact with any of you for 2 weeks. I'm so sorry. I love you all, but I also don't want to kill you or something.
Right.
Probably a little harsh. That was my sarcastic humor. So I'm sorry. But just like really have those conversations and then also communicate with your families, like make sure that they know that they are loved and that you are still thinking about them, even though you're not directly interacting with them over the holidays. So
yeah, and going off what Izzy said, I think I think that you have to constantly remind yourself that you're not only risking yourself, you're risking somebody that you know, and making sure that you're partaking in safe measures, just because you know that you may be okay, but the person closest to you or somebody that's close to another person, those grandpas and grandmas that are so important to the family, you have to remember that those are people that you want to make sure are safe. And and even though you want to go out and see people and dance the night away or do anything like that, you have to remember that you may be able to do that and be safe. Highly unlikely, but your family won't be. So even if you do go back to campus, your family of friends that you have on campus, those are people you want to take care of as well. So just always mitigating your risk and not thinking for yourself, but for your entire community and your entire family.
That's great. Thank you guys for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciated it. And I think it's really great to be able to get the perspective from, another side and just to kind of hear a little bit about what it's been like for you guys trying to navigate, new parts of your life in new locations, and also to try to maintain kind of safe boundaries, but family connection. So I think what I would leave us with is that, this is temporary, that this isn't forever. And I really love that you guys had really reiterated that trying to integrate longstanding traditions in a new way is really important. While it might be different, it's still going to be something that's great. So thank you guys for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.